Hello everyone and welcome to a very special project. Today is the day where I'm finally revealing the secret project I've been talking about the last couple of weeks quite often. And this project is especially for the German ones, maybe some Dutch people or people that have been visiting Germany, quite interesting. Now, to get things sorted right off the beginning, as you can see from the description, I have no experience with that, so I'm just getting it off my chest now. This is a sponsored video, if you will. There is some money involved here, and I'm doing that for a good reason. Now, let me just quickly explain that, because I feel like it is important to, explain this to you guys. You deserve it, because you are the people driving this whole channel, and as a matter of fact, you are the reason why I even got into the position doing that. Now, there was a very nice coincidental situation a few months ago where the marketing manager of a big shopping mall in Germany reached out to me and just saying that he knows my videos, he knows my channel, and if we can maybe talk about potential things we could do together. And honestly, I had some kind of requests in the past about projects, but they were all crap. Like, honestly, these were impolite, very arrogant, weird requests that you would never reply to. But this one was different. This one was really nice. It was a very friendly first contact, and I really admired the way that we found a solution what could work. He had a very specific plan in mind, and I have to admit that this plan was really accurate from the very get-go. Simply put, because the Centro in Oberhausen, which is the building I'm building, at least parts of it, but we'll come to that later, is something that really is connected to me. It is where I live, so I've been there multiple times in my life. It's one of the biggest shopping malls in whole Europe, and it kind of has a good history in terms of that. And now you would be wondering, and that's also pretty obvious, a good type of wondering, so if you will, this is a shopping mall and in a zoo game, why would you do that? So you guys know how Planet Zoo franchise mode works and how the game works in general. And we all know that there is a huge demand of hunger and thirst. So the people need to drink and eat all the time. And it is kind of crazy. And to get rid of that, you put down 1 million of those food shops everywhere in your zoo, which is kind of tedious work, which is kind of unnecessary if you ask me, but it's in the game, you have to work with it, so there's a certain thing you need to do with it. And also, it's not maybe not looking that well, because you always try to use different styles and stuff. So what we came up with is a solution that is kind of the biggest and nicest reward to your zoo. So if you have a good running franchise zoo and you made some decent money, because that asset will cost a lot of money in the end, I can already tell you, is more or less like a very versatile centerpiece in your own personal zoo. You can use it as everything you can imagine of. This is going to be a gigantic food court. There are multiple shops involved. You can even add more if you want, but I think I planned it with 6 food shops and 8 drink shops and 2 information kiosks and 2 toilet rooms or whatever. Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff in there, but you can always enlarge it. There is a big staff room in, so that people don't have to walk. There is like energy supply. Everything you can imagine is in that build. Now, this is very interesting because you can use it really in your zoos. So it's not only an item, a cosmetic item, it's really also a feasible item in terms of solving some of the actual issues. I think for me it was personally very important to have a project that really does make sense. That's nothing just for the sake of doing it, and here's me now talking about this building in particular a lot, what I did here. So the architectural style of the Centro Oberhausen is very general, if you will. It's nothing fancy in terms of a very specific architectural style that would lead into very modernesque or very old school or very let's say Roman or what like. So it is not something that would drive you into a certain architectural type area, and I think this was one of the reasons also why I agreed on that, because I feel if this building would be way too specific, it kind of, most of you guys out there would not be able to use it as an item. And the idea is that you guys can use it as an item and download it from the Steam Workshop and play it in your own zoos. By the way, it's not including any of the Arctic DLC pieces, so you should be good to go with the general, like the base game. That's also something I tried to work in. I really hope that I didn't by accident click on one of the pieces. I mostly remembered to deactivate the pieces, and I guess I think I remembered it everywhere. I'm not sure, but it should be. But now, the architectural style, as I said, is so versatile and so generic, and still looking very interesting and nice, that you will be able to use it in different ways. So that's something I really found interesting as well. And the second bit is, this kind of food court area has somewhat of a history. And this is a very funny history. Like, funny in terms of, I remembered being there always, and this food area was way overdue to be redone. And the reason why I was asked to do it is because this one has been just redone at the very end of 2019. I believe it was finished in December of 2019, so it's not that long ago, and it's very fresh, it's very modern, it's very cool. And yeah, the food oasis, as it was called before, has been existing for quite some years, and it was I think it was sometimes also called the Coca-Cola food oasis, which was branded by Coke, and it had this, I would even call it McDonald's 90-ish vibe to it. So very, very colorful and very also fragmented in the terms of shops that were there. It was the typical mall food area that you would have expected in the 90s, you know, and so it was way overdue. But the new style of it is really cool. It's very modern-esque. It's very, if you compare that to designs in smartphones, for example, it's really leaning towards material design, if you will. Very clear lines, very nice usage of colors to create some depth and to create some interesting things to look at. Very clear lines to draw a certain attention in some areas, to create let's say facades and faces that are broken up into segments that, you know, it's easier for you to look at different things, and it's just in general a very, very nice open area. Now, talking of that area, I managed to build it, and this is something I'm super proud of. It is done exactly one by one. So the dimensions used in this build are mimicking exactly the real life dimensions. I got the plans, the architectural plans, which obviously I cannot share with you, otherwise I would have put them in to show you how exact it is, but I mean, you will understand that I'm not able to show them to you. But yeah, I had them at hand and I could use them to exactly build it. And one thing I'm super excited about to say is I was not expecting that a Planet Zoo will handle it that well, because at the end of the day, Planet Zoo and Planet Coaster as well, they had a certain tendency to size things a little bit too big in comparison to real life sizes. But for whatever reason in here it worked out pretty well. I was able to make it really in a size that, you know, you could really grasp that it is exactly the real life size, and it still made sense in the context of Planet Zoo. So the size of this entire building is almost like the size of one entire habitat, which is quite sizable. It's quite big, but you can still manage to work it into your zoo and have it as a centerpiece. You can make some room for it, bring it in, and it will, as I said earlier in today's episode, you can use it as the let's say it, the savior of your food and thirst drink demand of your guests. Now that's something I'm really proud of, that it all is really one by one into the real life dimensions. Some things I have to say, for those of you who know this area and who have been there lately, they will see some minor changes I did. I would call them artistic changes, but it's not really artistic in that way. I made them according to the various demands that the game has. So some things were just not doable, and I decided to go for a way more Plan Zoo-ish style. So for example, I didn't do too many assets that are inside the actual floor ground of this building. So at the end you will see I'm using a lot of planters and stuff like that, but it's not that I'm doing it in the fashion that it actually is there. So all the seating areas and stuff I basically left out because you guys have to put in the pathway yourself. And for those of you who worked already with the path tool in Planet Zoo, they know it's kind of a struggle to get it well shaped in the way you want to shape it, and that's why I basically went into the trade-off of leaving you more space to work with rather than, you know, filling it all in with items that you would have no chance to fill in the pathing correctly. And yeah, that's mainly the reason why I decided to go for it. Now, while we are seeing the entrance being made in the background, this is something I was quite focusing on a bit because I wanted to make this part of the building look very modern-esque and very nice, but as I said earlier, also general enough and generic enough so you can add your own touches to it if you will, but you can still use it in every zoo type you wanted to have it in. Maybe it's not perfectly suitable for African areas, but most likely everyone else can use it. You can still use it in African area though, just change some of the colors and you're good to go. Now, this build in particular, and I want to talk about one specific thing I wasn't expecting. Now, you guys know, I try to get you into my process of thinking as well as into my reasons that drove me doing stuff, you know. And I wanted to take get you into my process of how I accepted on that little sponsored experiment here, and how I decided on what I do and how I do it. Now, I think one of the things I didn't expect is how much I learned during the process of recreation. Now, this whole build has nothing to do with any animal, you know. There's no animal harmed in here, but it's also no animal involved in here. So it has been solely focused on architecture. And architecture is very interesting when it comes to building your own style, getting mad at what you do and doing cool stuff in the game without boundaries and any limitations. Recreation, though, is a bit of a different story because you have to stick to what is already existing in real life. It can be a limiting factor when it comes to your creativity, but in my case, and that was super surprising, it was exactly the opposite. I just loved the fact that I needed to come up with creative solutions to mimic what is existing in the real world and how I could do it in the game. And I felt like this reminded me of what made me really, or what enabled me to be really good in the Planet series. And that was my recreation of, for example, Space Mountain early on in the Planko days. And also my recreations of other things, for example, the Matrix movie scene and stuff like that. It really carried something into my process of building that is totally lost when you don't do any recreation. And that is really finding real life elements to your builds, or finding them the pieces that you can use to build these things. For example, these metal, or like let's say this big glass opening facade over here, which is the entrance of the building, is using all these iron beams in between and these iron guiders and a lot of structures in between that make it feel more heavy. And then you have all the ropes connected to the overhanging awnings and stuff. So finding pieces that help you mimic that in the game is really cool, because then you can reuse it in other areas. And I can tell you, I made already a lot of usage of those pieces in other projects you will see in the next upcoming days. So that really was a very surprising and pleasant surprise, to be honest, that I could carry so many things into this build that will help me to be so much better in other areas, especially for indoor areas. And I think especially indoor is something that I was lacking a bit of experience. I have to say though, it was not my strongest part so far. If you remember, for example, what Mike did to my education center in Koali Zoo, you will remember that this was something he improved dramatically over what I did. So mine was really empty, had no life in there. It was really just the core, and then basically it was nothing too special about it. But this time, I really have to say that I had to build a lot more detail in here. I had to carry a lot more little things into this build that mimic the way it is looking in real life. So for example, we are now building the facade of the McDonald's building within the food court area. However, I have to say, like the real one continues to be all the way to the outside of the building, so you actually have also an outdoor area of the McDonald's, but I'm not building that in here because the reason for that is I used already so many pieces that it will not be coming as a blueprint. It is actually coming as a habitat. Might sound strange, but that's the only way how I can integrate all the buildings and all the pieces and provide this as one simple piece. So if you're looking for it, but I will write a big explanation to that because otherwise it's a bit complicated. You will not find this in the blueprint section of the construction. You will find that in the blueprint section of the habitats, which is easy to find once you know it, but if you don't know it, you will search forever. Now, yeah, I didn't spend too much time making a custom McDonald's sign, I will already tell you, because I'm not really sure how it works exactly with the copyright, even though I have I have the official permission to build this building from the Centro Oberhausen, which obviously enabled me to do it, and I can use the logo, I can use everything around here, but you know, since McDonald's is not really led by the Centro Oberhausen, it's a franchise inside the building, I'm not exactly sure how it works. So that's why I decided on not recreating the logo one by one. You can tell there is like an M on this building, but it could also be from Monsieur Frita, you know, and that's the brand of Planet Zoo, so that's all fine, all the Planet franchise. Yeah, whole lot of information that I have to download into this episode, but since a very long episode, I think we're all fine and we can relax a little bit now to talk about maybe the most impressive and also my favorite element of this entire build, and this is a overgrown planter element that they use to bring in a nice design to the food court area. It uses a very darkish gray color code as basis color, but then they have this almost looks like a I don't even know how to call it. It looks like scattered metal or in a way, but you have all these single elements that are switching between different gray tones, and it creates this very nice transition effect in the backside of this element. So it's really cool because it creates a very nice color coding, if you will, and it creates a nice transition, and especially when it's lit at night, it has a very cool effect to it because it casts the light in a very interesting way. It has all these different layers of depth, and then you have these green elements in there, which is actually some plants, and I needed to use this little hedge piece over here, but I feel like it really does the job quite well, so I'm super happy. And what they did, they took this grayish thing, this grayish element, and they moved it into a color coding for the upper level of this oasis, which is super cool. They have like a little bit of a balcony area going on where you can sit higher up and like relax a little bit. And what I love especially about how they redesigned it is that the lower part of the building, so basically floor level, is the restaurant area with all the seating area and where people would actually sit to, you know, snack their burgers and snack their fries and stuff like that. But it's not a place where you would actually relax, if you will. You know, usually the food court was never a place to relax. It was a place to get a refill, if you will, but not to relax. But what they did is actually these elements, as you can see, for example over here, finishing off this style element, they're not only there to look good, but they're also fulfilling a second reason or a second function, and that is casting the sound and noise level a bit better. So they are also fulfilling somewhat of a noise reduction functionality, which is making the upper layer a more recreation area, if you will. It's a lot denser, it's a lot smaller, the ceiling is a lot closer to you, it provides a bit more of a, I don't want to call it claustrophobic, but it's a lot tighter, if you will. I mean, hell, this is a huge building, it's not claustrophobic at all, but if you compare it to the big open hall, it creates a more cozy area where you want to sit down and relax. So for example, if your girlfriend is going for a huge shopping trip and you as a boyfriend, happened quite often to me, you're kind of exhausted and you just want to have a break, you know, browse some social media and just chill there for a moment and let her go for the 78th attempt on finding the right shoes, And then you can have some good time there in this area on the upper level, having a bit of a recreation without being annoyed by all the people taking their food at this point in time. So I love this little split approach of that building. So you have a lot of nice and very tasty options in the lower level, but the upper level provides you with a lot more relaxed area focus. It's almost looking like a bit in a library where you have also an area to chill down and relax and stuff like that. So it really is cool. You will see in the end in the screenshots how it actually shaped up. However, I need to make another disclaimer here. It's very unfortunate, but there was no way for me to implement that for you. You have to do it yourself. This upper area is featuring custom benches and custom seating areas. However, they are not usable in the game because I cannot create custom seating elements. You have to use benches and in-game benches to do this. However, these benches cannot be put into any kind of blueprint, neither into the habitat blueprints nor into the normal construction blueprints. So you have to put them down yourself, as you have to do it with the pathing. Yeah, you know what that means, but you will. I think you will be fine. You will be very fine, guys. Anyways, we are talking about the elevator now. Oh god, this elevator, it drove me nuts. And Frontier, if you're listening, there's a need for glass pieces. We need simple glass pieces without animals on them, I guess, without any print on them, just simple glass pieces, because at the end of the day I ended up leaving out the glass and only using these iron beams in between to mimic as if this was an elevator piece that has some glass to it, but I left it open because it looked so much better. But yeah, I like this little elevator element, and I will definitely reuse it in a different park as well, because it's so simple. It's just this like kind of iron, very industrial looking frame, if you will, and then you have these glass metal combined elevator things in the middle. I really like this because it's very pure, it's very simple, but it fits the overall style. So again, it's very generic, and I'm even thinking of releasing some of the elements I used in here as simple blueprints. So for example, we will also have a different type of elevator stairs in here in the build, these automatic things, and then we also have some cool planters, and we have some cool seating areas. So stuff like that. I'm just looking into it, how I can provide this to you guys as a single blueprint. Now, we are now in the previously mentioned upper area that is meant to be more of a recreation area. And I have to say again that I love this area. And I haven't been there after the rebuild of this whole food court. I think the last time is 2 years ago that I've been to the Centro in Oberhausen. So it's about time to go there again and experience this in person, now that I've spent many hours of my life building it, I guess. So it's about time to get back into it and see what I actually did there. And now, also for those of you who are waiting for some cinematics at the end, well, nope, you will get some screenshots, static screenshots, because there will be a dedicated cinematic video which is out tomorrow. There's a simple reason for that, and you know, again, I like to be honest with you guys. I would have loved to put it in, but since this is going to be shared also on the social media channels of the Centro Oberhausen, because at the end of the day it's their asset, and it's a vehicle for them also to bring the newly redesigned food court to the people on their social media channels, and therefore they need a cinematic video only, because no one would watch a 35-ish plus minute speed build video to be interested. That's for the people who love games and who love to watch this nerd stuff we do here, which I'm glad we all do. So yeah, no one wants to do that. So I'm going to make a more easy content cinematic video for tomorrow to you know, favor and to complement the people in 2020 that are here for the easy content, for the short content. So yeah, that's what we're going to do, and this is why there will be no cinematics. But I think it's cool to just have a 1 minute cinematic one. This is very, very much something I like to do in general, because it focuses on the cinematic aspect of it. It's not a kind of add-on to the overall time-lapse video, which feels a bit out of place sometimes, and it doesn't really show the entire thing in its glory because you have seen the time-lapse before, so it's breaking the immersion a bit. But if you're doing it solely based on what you wanted to do as a cinematic, and you just do it as a cinematic only, I think it works to carry this bit of nice artistic cinematic video. I think that's it. Now, yeah, we are in the very, very nice upper area, as I said, and this is now one of my most favorite parts of the entire project. The wall graphics. It's so simple. They had such a floristic, floral wall design, almost, I guess, and I felt it so cool because it's again, I want to compare that to a design I saw in the last couple of years developing, especially in like Starbucks or McDonald's, in the more, let's say, launch-ish aspect of it. So I really liked how this turned out with the green tones to it. Like everything is a bit more ecological and a bit more towards nature. So I found it very interesting to see how they did this, and it was a lot of fun building that, because for whatever reason we had exactly the pieces in the game that I needed. So they were almost looking exactly the way that it looked inside this actual mall. So yeah, quite a bit of cool coincidences happening here. Well, and now we are talking about the next building that I really paid a bit more attention to, and maybe to get you into my thought process again. So this is the Five Guys restaurant, which I find really interesting because it also had like 2 levels, but the cool thing is it's not really part of the actual second level. It's not really connected, not as that I could have seen that. So it is connected from the Five Guys shop itself, but it's not connected to the actual balcony area, which I think is important, because then the stuff I talked about earlier would basically be screwed, and it would still be food area. Now, I found this really interesting that this area has this lovely little upper stair, almost like little American diner style, which I guess makes sense with the Five Guys thing. But I love this, how they implemented that without going too much into this diner vibe, and I really loved how this works. So yeah, I guess this is really important to say. I guess that this building has some eye candy for you guys, and this is also how I set it up to decide what I go and do 100% accurate, and what I kind of try to implement in a more free and more creative way. So my idea was that I took some of the things that I saw in there that are really essential for the entire build, and really built them in detail, which is partly, for example, the Five Guys building, the McDonald's shop, and this grayish design element combined with the upper layer balcony and the elevator. I guess these are the things that I found were the most important things to glue it all together, to really give you this first impression of, yes, I know that place. You know, I think whenever you do a recreation that cannot be 1,000,000% accurate simply because you don't have the pieces and the time and the money and whatever, you have to decide on what is the most important focus point in your building that makes up for what you cannot do. So you know, it's that way of my thinking went that way. I was trying to come up with what is not as essential to create the vibe that you needed, while I was trying to maintain these things that I felt vital to the overall look and feel of this building. Just, you know, so for example, the dome, the dome, top of the dome, I felt is very vital, and that's also why I decided at the very beginning to go with non-glass pieces, because I felt I could use the iron fencing a lot better to exactly create the shape that the dome has, because it's so unique and it's such an important thing to look at to exactly get the feeling that this is the building. And same goes for the pillars. I could have done the pillars way easier with using some concrete pieces that would have had maybe a bit of a wrong color coding, but would maybe look way better texture wise. But I ended up doing this with the planks, because I felt the planks had a way more interesting texture that mimic the marble. Actually, I think the columns, if I'm not completely wrong, they should be marble or something marble looking, I guess. And I felt like the planks are just doing a better job in mimicking that. And yeah, so that's part of the reason why I decided to have some iconic things in here that I focused on. Another one of those iconic things is one of the almost like stage-like looking upper level seating area. So I think also this one is very cool because it was very simple, but it has this modern feel to it because of the colors used. So you can see I'm putting some pillows down. These are actually like looking like pillows. These are these typical little hard pillow things that you find in modern-esque areas and lounges to sit down on. I think they are fully integrated into the wooden area. You cannot take them away. They are just part of it by default, but you can sit down there. And yeah, I like the color coding. They use some brown orange-ish color coding, while in different other areas they used like greenish color code. And yeah, just in general they created a nice color coding with colors that really do complement this area rather than breaking the mood. So they are not too colorful, they're not too poppy, they are not trying to scream in your faces. They're just there, and they integrate into this area in a very natural kind of way, which I thought was really cool because talking about design and integration of design elements, you always have to think about what do you want to be the star of the show and what is just there to complement it. So, you know, many designers and architects say the details are the best when you don't see them. You only notice them when they are not there. So the best details are those that only exist because they make this whole thing look correct and right for the natural feel of your eye and your personal appearance and appeal, while you wouldn't notice them when you talk about them in particular, but you notice if they're missing. That's the basic idea about this very materialistic and easy, simple design. And I really found this very interesting and tried to implement it over here. You can see this is again one of the custom seating areas. It's almost looking like a grandstand-ish look, like in a stadium, just on a way smaller scale. And it also resembles somewhat of a thing we had in I think it was kindergarten, where they also had these kind of things where, you know, all the kids can come together and then the kindergarten people talk to them and read some books and histories and stories and stuff. And I found it interesting because the idea that this came to my mind really showed me that this is also like atmosphere wise. It gives me this vibe, which is totally cool because that's a cozy vibe. I remember it to be cozy and interesting, and I wanted to sit down there. And as you can see, the fact that they're bringing this even closer to the roof area, which, by the way, has some dedicated noise-canceling pads on the ceiling. So it's really cool design-wise, but it, again, fulfills the function of being a noise reduction system. So it's really cool, and I can imagine that this upper level is very, very cool and enjoyable to sit down to and just enjoy the area. Yeah, and talking about the wall graphics again, this is the second part of it, and here you can see how the more like pastel tones work together. And yeah, I'm just a big fan of this upper level area because it is just so versatile and it's so cool looking and so cozy. And yeah, now the last bit of today's video, which is pretty long, but we are getting towards the end of it, is actually implementing some more shops. And this was very vital because I felt it is important to have a lot of different shops in here that are not too close to each other. So one thing I wanted to avoid is to have this whole place being super crowded by the guests and everyone getting stuck. So I did some testing off screen, which I didn't record, to see how close I can get the shops together. And this over here, the Five Guys and the 3 shops next to it, were one of the most tricky areas which caused some of the problems, and I only left them in the way they are because it is vital for the overall look and feel of this building. If I could have, I just would have put them a little bit further away from each other to not create these queues that are happening in certain areas. The good thing though is the longer you have this building standing with all the shops in here, people will naturally spread across that area. So it's a very natural flow that is happening in here, and so this is what I try to achieve by putting more shops down also to the other side. And you can see it was quite difficult to build all of that. I just needed to drag down the wall and then just open again the windows, and it was a bit of like, you know, trial and error to find out how exactly I could build them together and make it happen. But in the end, it all looked cool. And the moment all of the shutter windows are going up, all the shutters are just moving up, and you see that all the shops are opened, it is looking so cool, like really cool. But yeah, the last bit is only tidying it all up, making it clean, making sure that the outside also looks kind of cool. Well, kind of cool, no, that's too much. It's looking clean, that's what it is. It's not cool, it's clean. And the idea is that you can cover it up with whatever you want. You can make it part of a habitat, you can make like a rock backside of the habitat, which is part of the wall. You can, whatever, put foliage against it, make some ivy growing down, whatever you can imagine. I left it simple, yet tidy for you guys. So yeah, talking of guys, for you 5 guys, just talking 5 guys. Yeah, the last bit, as I said, is making sure that there is also an element of planters and stuff. And yeah, I mainly left out all the little bits and details at the very end because they were so nasty to film, and I had some crashes also going on where I left lost some stuff. So yeah, it's just what it is. You will be able to see this all in the final images and also in the cinematic that is getting delivered to you tomorrow. But now it's time to say goodbye from my side because it's end of the commentary. You get some images now, some screenshots. But I really want to thank every single one of you supporting me on that channel. I really hope that this experiment found you well and you guys understood why I do it, and potentially in the future we can do something else without you being mad at me. So I would really love to see and hear all of your feedback down below in the comments. Do you know that place? Have you been there? If not, would you go there? Do you have the chance to? And if not, if you're from America or from any other country that, you know, potentially is not as close, is it still interesting for you to get that much info about a building that is pretty close to me? And yeah, just let me know everything you want to talk about in the comments down below. Other than that, thanks a bunch, guys. Have a wonderful Saturday, and I'll see you in the next one.